I was sent through the service entrance at my own sister's engagement party, mistaken for staff, ignored by my parents, and told by my sister not to stand where I did not belong. What no one in that room knew was that I was quietly watching unpaid invoices pile up, illegal requests being made behind the scenes, and a powerful family losing control without realizing I was the one who could shut the entire night down. By the time the music stopped and the room went silent, the truth had nowhere left to hide, and neither did they. Chapter 1. The invitation I almost declined. I almost said no when the invitation arrived. It came in the mail on a thick cream envelope with my name written in a looping script I recognized instantly. Lena always liked things that looked elegant from a distance. The paper was heavier than necessary, the kind that made a point of being noticed. I held it in my hands longer than I needed to, already aware of the quiet tension it carried. Lena Harper, my younger sister, was getting engaged. We were 7 years apart in age, but the real distance between us had grown over the last decade. We spoke on birthdays, holidays, and the occasional family update that never went very deep. The kind of contact that allowed everyone to say we were still close without requiring any real effort. I was 41, Lena was 34. She had built her life in careful steps that made sense to our parents. A steady relationship, a career in event planning that sounded impressive enough at dinner parties, a future that looked safe and familiar. Mine had unfolded differently, in ways that never quite fit into neat explanations. The invitation was formal, almost stiff. Engagement celebration, historic waterfront venue, outside Boston. Early fall. Dress code implied but not stated. Everything about it suggested importance. I set the envelope down on the kitchen counter and walked away from it twice before opening it. Lena called that evening. Her voice was bright but controlled, the way it got when she was nervous and trying not to show it. She talked about the venue first, then the guest list, then how much pressure she felt to make everything perfect. Only later did she mention his family. "They are very traditional," she said carefully. "They value appearances. This night matters to them." I could hear the unspoken request forming before she said it. "I just want everything to go smoothly. Please do not make things awkward." She did not say why she felt the need to warn me. She did not mention my clothes, my job, or the fact that I rarely attended events like this anymore, but we both knew what she meant. Our family had always prized calm over honesty. My parents believed conflict was something to be avoided, even when it came at the cost of fairness. Growing up, I learned that being agreeable mattered more than being understood. I became the child who did not cause trouble, the one who handled things quietly, the one who never asked for recognition. When I started doing well, really well, I learned something else. Success made people uncomfortable when it could not be easily categorized. I stopped talking about my work at family gatherings because it changed the room. It shifted expectations. It created questions no one wanted to ask. Lena never asked either. I thought about the years I had stepped in when she needed help. Time, money, connections. I did it without keeping score because she was my sister, because family meant something to me, even when it felt one-sided. None of that ever made its way into our shared narrative. My success remained my private business. My presence became something to manage. I told her I would come. The venue sat along the water, a restored brick building with wide windows that caught the late afternoon light. It was the kind of place people chose when they wanted their event to feel important without looking flashy. Old beams, polished floors, a sense of history curated for modern tastes. I arrived alone. I had chosen a simple dress, nothing extravagant, nothing that demanded attention, comfortable heels, minimal jewelry. I looked like someone who belonged anywhere, which often meant being treated like someone who belonged nowhere in particular. The parking lot was busy, cars pulling in and out, guests adjusting jackets and dresses before heading inside. I walked toward the entrance, invitation in hand, rehearsing polite smiles in my head. I did not make it past the door. The security attendant stepped in front of me with a practiced motion, his expression neutral but firm. He asked for my vendor badge. I told him I was a guest. He looked me over, not rudely, just quickly, the way people do when they think they already know the answer. He asked again, this time more slowly, for my credentials. I felt the familiar tightening in my chest, that quiet recognition of being misread. I explained that I was here for the engagement celebration. I gave my name. He glanced at his list, then back at me. His tone cooled. Vendors enter through the side. Loading area is around back. I stood there for a moment, stunned more by how easy it had been than by the mistake itself. I looked past him and saw Lena inside the room. She was laughing with a group near the bar, her posture perfect, her smile practiced. Our eyes met, just for a second. Her expression flickered, recognition, hesitation. Then she turned away. The security attendant cleared his throat, waiting for me to move. Someone behind me sighed, impatient. I could have spoken up. I could have insisted. I could have walked past him and dared someone to stop me. I had done harder things than that in my life, but something about the moment held me still. I nodded, stepped aside, and followed the direction he pointed. The side entrance was narrower, less inviting. A staff member held the door open, barely glancing at me as I passed. Inside, the lighting shifted. The air smelled faintly of cleaning solution and catering prep. Voices echoed differently back here, louder and less controlled. I stood near the wall, listening. From the other side of the partition, I could hear music swelling, glasses clinking, applause. The celebration had begun. No one came to look for me. I thought about my parents already seated somewhere inside, pretending not to notice my absence. I thought about Lena, focused on making everything perfect, unwilling to risk discomfort for my sake. I thought about how often I had swallowed moments like this because it was easier to challenge them. The realization settled slowly. It was not the security guard who had diminished me. It was the ease with which everyone else had allowed it. I leaned against the wall and let myself breathe. Just one evening, I told myself, just get through it. I straightened my shoulders and stepped further into the service corridor, my heels clicking softly against the concrete floor. I could endure a lot, and for now, that would be enough.
Chapter 2. What I Saw from the Back of the Room. The hallway carried me farther from the warm glow of the ballroom and into the part of the building that existed only to make everything else run smoothly. The air was cooler. The lighting was flat and practical. Cables ran along the walls. Carts rattled past with trays and glassware. And somewhere nearby, a machine hummed with mechanical indifference. A woman in black slacks and a headset stepped into my path. "You are with the outside team, right?" she said, already half turned away. I barely had time to open my mouth. "Vendor check-in is behind the curtain. Stay close. We are tight on time." She pressed a thin paper wristband into my hand and pointed toward a door marked Service. The band was flimsy, almost weightless, but the moment it circled my wrist, it seemed to decide who I was. I could have corrected her. I could have said I was a guest, that my sister was inside, that my name was printed in elegant script on an invitation no one had bothered to ask for. I could have insisted on being seen. Instead, I slipped the band on. Part of me still wanted to be easy. Another part recognized the feeling settling in my chest. It was the same instinct I trusted at work, the one that told me to stop pushing and start paying attention. The staging area sat behind a long curtain that separated it from the ballroom. Staff moved in and out with quiet urgency, adjusting lighting, carrying trays, murmuring into headsets. From this side, the music sounded distant, muted, like it belonged to someone else's celebration. I stood near a rack of linens and watched. Lena was everywhere. She moved quickly, checking place cards, straightening chairs, smoothing table runners that were already perfect. When she faced guests, her smile was bright and confident. When she turned toward staff, the smile disappeared, replaced by a sharp focus that edged into panic. She corrected a server on the angle of a tray. She snapped at a caterer about timing, then immediately apologized, her voice tight. It would have been easy to call it stress, but her eyes kept drifting toward the main table, and every time they did, her shoulders tightened. That was where the Caldwells sat. Patricia Caldwell looked like she had been placed there on purpose. Navy dress, pearls resting perfectly at her throat, hair smooth and controlled. She smiled often, but the smile did not soften her, it measured people. When Patricia spoke, others leaned in. When she laughed, the table laughed with her, not because she was funny, but because her approval felt necessary. Richard Caldwell sat beside her, well-dressed but tense. He spoke less, choosing his words carefully when he did. He held his drink without sipping, as if even relaxing carried consequences. Patricia guided the conversation with polite questions that landed sharp. "So, what do you do again, dear?" she asked someone nearby. The woman answered too quickly. Patricia turned her attention to Lena. "You have done such a beautiful job," she said. "This must be exhausting. A young woman can only handle so much." Lena laughed, thin and controlled. "It is worth it," she said. I saw her hand tremble when she set down a stack of programs. She pressed her fingers into her palm for a second, then lifted her chin and moved on. My parents arrived not long after. I saw Margaret Harper through a gap in the curtain, wearing the soft blue dress she favored when she wanted to blend in. Thomas Harper walked beside her, tie slightly crooked, hands clasped in front of him. My mother's eyes found me. They widened for a brief moment, then she looked away. Not because she did not care, but because acknowledging me would require action, and action invited conflict. My father followed her gaze and gave a small nod. It could have meant hello. It could have meant, please keep this quiet. They moved to their table and sat down as if nothing was wrong. The distance between us was deliberate. A server brushed past me, muttering about timing. Another staff member nearly collided with a cart and apologized without looking up. Everyone back here had a role. I did not. The woman with the headset returned. "You need to move," she said quietly. "This area is for staff." I held up my invitation. "I'm a guest," I said. She glanced at it, then at the wristband on my arm. "Then go in through the guest entrance," she replied, already turning away. The guest entrance had already decided otherwise, but I stepped around the curtain anyway, staying close to the back wall where the light was dimmer and people lingered without drawing attention. For a moment, no one noticed me. The room looked beautiful in the way Lena always wanted things to look. Candlelight reflected off glassware, soft music filled the space, large windows framed the dark water outside. Then Lena saw me. Her smile faltered mid-conversation. She excused herself and walked toward me quickly. Up close, her face was tight, her eyes bright with strain. "What are you doing back here?" she said under her breath, glancing past me. I kept my voice steady. "I came in the only way they let me. I was sent through the service entrance." Color rose in her cheeks, shame, not anger. "Evelyn, you cannot stand here. It looks bad." "Bad for who?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. She leaned closer. "For me," she said, "for us. Please do not do this tonight." "Do what?" I asked. Her eyes sharpened. "Make it about you," she said. The words cut deeper than the security guard had. They carried years of quiet assumption, the idea that I was always the complication that needed managing. Behind her, Patricia Caldwell laughed softly at something someone said. Lena softened her tone. "His family is watching everything," she said. "Please, stand somewhere else, somewhere you fit." Somewhere you fit. I could have reminded her of the nights I answered her calls when she was scared, the rent I helped cover, the introductions I made. I could have asked when I stopped being her sister and started being a liability. Instead, I nodded. Relief loosened her shoulders. "Thank you," she whispered, and walked away. I stayed near the back as she returned to the center of the room. The moment she reached Patricia, Lena straightened, her smile returning like armor. That was when I started watching Patricia. She did not enjoy the party so much as manage it. She pulled people into side conversations, touched arms lightly to steer them, smiled while making decisions. Near the audio-visual table stood a technician in a black polo, his badge reading Caleb Moore. He held a tablet close and kept glancing toward the stage. Patricia approached him, smiling. She spoke quickly, body angled away from the room. Caleb shook his head once. Patricia reached into her clutch and slipped something small into his hand. He hesitated, then nodded. A familiar chill moved through me. I had seen exchanges like that before. Quiet deals, rules bent just enough to break later. 2 staff members whispered behind the bar. "They want extra champagne that's not in the package," one said. "And they still haven't cleared the final payment," the other replied. I looked at Richard Caldwell. He leaned slightly away from Patricia, eyes fixed on the table. Patricia laughed again, unbothered. Lena looked like someone holding a structure up with her bare hands. My parents sat smiling at their table, refusing to look my way. I stepped back behind the curtain, letting it hide me, not out of shame, but out of clarity. If Patricia Caldwell was paying technicians and pushing demands outside the agreement, she was planning something. People didn't spend money like that without expecting a return. I pressed my fingers against the paper wristband on my arm. It was thin, but it had decided where I belonged. The hurt settled into something steadier. I was not staying to be humiliated. I was staying to watch.
Chapter 3. The Pattern I Couldn't Ignore. The longer I stood behind the curtain, the clearer the shape of the evening became. At first, the details felt small, easy to dismiss if you wanted to stay comfortable. A pause here, a glance there, words that sounded confident but avoided substance. But once I started lining them up in my head, they stopped looking random. The payment had not gone through. I heard it the first time from a catering assistant whispering to another near the service bar. She said it like an annoyance, not a crisis, but the words stuck with me. Final payment still pending. I watched how people reacted to that information, how they did not react. Patricia Caldwell continued smiling like money was not something that could ever inconvenience her. Richard Caldwell laughed when someone mentioned rising costs, then immediately changed the subject. He laughed too quickly, too loud, the way people do when they want to move past numbers. Lena avoided any conversation that drifted toward budgets. Every time a coordinator approached her with a question about timing or resources, she glanced instinctively toward Patricia before answering, as if checking permission. The pattern began to form. They talked about money constantly, but never about amounts. Everything was phrased in confidence without specificity. "We will take care of it. That will not be an issue. It is already handled." I had heard those phrases before, in boardrooms, in negotiations that ended badly. Another staff member approached Daniel Brooks near the edge of the room. Daniel was the general manager of the venue, a calm presence in a tailored suit that signaled authority without demanding attention. I watched his expression change slightly as the staff member spoke. Not alarm, calculation. Daniel nodded once, thanked them, and walked toward the back hallway. I followed at a distance. He stopped near the service desk, pulling out his phone, scanning something on the screen. I stepped closer, just enough to catch his eye without interrupting. He hesitated, then recognized me from earlier, not as a guest, as someone who did not quite fit the picture. "Can I help you?" he asked quietly. I kept my voice low. "I wanted to ask about the timeline for the evening," I said. "There seems to be some confusion." Daniel studied me for a moment, weighing something. "We are experiencing a delay," he said carefully. "Administrative." "Is that common?" I asked. "Not at this stage," he replied. He did not elaborate, but he did not need to. I could read it in his posture, the way his shoulders stayed relaxed while his jaw tightened. I did not press him, not yet. Instead, I stepped back and watched the room again, this time with intent. Patricia had positioned herself near the center aisle, intercepting people as they moved. She guided conversations away from staff and toward guests. She made herself the answer to every question before one could be asked. I noticed how she avoided Daniel entirely. Then I saw Mark Caldwell standing near the windows, staring out at the dark water beyond the glass. Mark looked nothing like the polished confidence his mother projected. His suit fit well, but his shoulders slumped. His tie was loosened slightly, his fingers worrying the edge of a napkin. I approached him slowly, giving him time to see me before I spoke. "Hey," I said. He startled, then managed a tired smile. "Evelyn," he said, "I did not expect to see you back here." "Neither did I replied. He glanced around, then lowered his voice. "This night is a little more intense than I expected." "That is one way to put it," I said. He exhaled and rubbed the back of his neck. "My mother wants everything perfect," he said. "She always does." There was something else in his voice, not pride, resignation. "She seems very confident," I said. He gave a short laugh. "She's confident until the numbers show up," he said, then stopped himself. I waited. He sighed. "Things are tight right now," he admitted. "The market hit us harder than we planned, but she thinks she can manage it." "Manage how?" I asked gently. He shook his head. "I don't know the details," he said. "I try not to ask. She says it will all work out." He looked back toward Patricia, who was laughing with a group near the bar. "She always says that," he added. The admission was quiet, but it landed heavily. Before I could respond, Lena appeared beside us, her smile too quick. "Mark," she said, "we need to keep things moving." He nodded immediately. "Of course," he said. As they walked away together, I watched Lena lean closer to him, speaking quickly, her hand tight around his arm. It was not affection, it was urgency. I turned back toward the service area. The technician, Caleb Moore, stood near the audio-visual table again, his tablet resting against his hip. His eyes flicked toward Patricia, then toward the stage, then back to his screen. Patricia approached him a second time. I couldn't hear what she said, but I could see the tension in Caleb's shoulders. He shook his head again, slower this time. Patricia leaned in closer, her voice low. She gestured subtly toward the stage and then toward the guests. She smiled like she was offering a solution. Caleb swallowed and nodded. Something about the exchange felt rehearsed, like this was not the first time she had done it. I stepped farther back and pulled out my phone. There was one person I trusted to help me see this clearly without escalating it. Sophia Nguyen answered on the second ring. "Hey, Sophia," I said quietly, "I need a favor." Her tone shifted immediately. "What kind of favor?" she asked. "The kind that stays clean," I said. "I'm at an event where I think boundaries are being pushed. I don't want conclusions, I want documentation." There was a pause. "Understood," she said. "I'll flag it as a compliance review." I slipped my phone back into my pocket and took a steady breath. I wasn't angry anymore. The hurt from earlier had cooled into something sharper. The picture was clear now. If the engagement went forward smoothly and money appeared, the Caldwells would present it as a triumph, proof of stability, proof of success. If it did not, there was another option. A disruption, a misunderstanding, a technical issue, something to justify pulling back with dignity intact. Patricia was buying cooperation to save the evening. She was buying control. I looked around the room again. The smiles, the laughter, the careful choreography. They thought the night belonged to them. I leaned against the wall and folded my arms, watching the flow of staff, the movement of guests, the way pressure gathered at invisible seams. I wouldn't intervene yet. Some truths need space to reveal themselves, and when they did, there would be no turning back.
Chapter 4. The moment the room went quiet. The music swelled and softened as the lights shifted, warming the room into something almost cinematic. Glasses caught the glow, candles flickered along the tables. The windows behind the main space reflected the water outside like a dark mirror. Everything looked exactly the way it was meant to look when people wanted a moment to feel perfect. Lena stood near the center with Mark beside her, both of them holding champagne flutes. She smiled at the guests, but I could see how tightly she was gripping the stem of her glass. Her knuckles had gone pale. Daniel Brooks approached me quietly from the side. He did not smile. He leaned in just enough that no one else would notice and spoke in a voice meant only for me. "The final payment did not clear," he said. I nodded once. "We cannot proceed the way we planned," he continued. "We need a decision." There it was, the moment the night had been quietly moving toward since the first whisper behind the bar. I looked around the room one more time. Patricia Caldwell stood near the front, her posture relaxed, her expression confident. She was laughing at something a guest had said, completely unbothered. Richard sat beside her, shoulders tight, eyes fixed on the table as if he could disappear into it. Lena glanced toward Patricia, then back at Mark. She said something to him quickly, her smile never breaking. I felt the last of my hesitation drain away. I stepped forward. At first, no one noticed. The music was still playing, glasses were still being raised. Then Daniel moved with me, positioning himself slightly behind my shoulder, his presence a quiet signal. The host of the evening tapped the microphone. "If everyone could have your attention for just a moment," he said. The room hushed gradually, conversations faded, the music softened and then stopped. Lena looked startled. Patricia turned, her smile fixed, eyes narrowing just a fraction. I could feel the weight of the room settle on me. I spoke calmly. "Before we continue, I need to address a logistical issue regarding this event," I said. A ripple of confusion moved through the guests. Patricia tilted her head. "Excuse me?" she said, her voice smooth. "Who are you?" I met her gaze. "My name is Evelyn Harper," I said. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Lena froze. "I am here to confirm how we proceed given that the final payment for this event has not been completed," I continued. Patricia laughed lightly. "There must be some mistake," she said. "That has already been handled." Daniel took a small step forward. "Our system shows otherwise," he said. "The payment attempt failed and there has been no replacement authorization." Patricia's smile tightened. "That is an administrative delay," she said. "It will be resolved." I nodded. "Perhaps," I said, "but until it is, we are bound by the terms of the contract." She looked at me again, more carefully this time. "And what exactly is your role in this?" she asked. I did not answer immediately. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. Not thick, not dramatic, just organized. "The agreement for this venue outlines what is included and what is not," I said. "Additional services require written approval and cleared payment prior to delivery." I opened the folder and held it where Daniel could see it. "Over the last hour, there have been multiple requests outside of those terms," I continued. "Extra champagne, changes to audio-visual timing, adjustments to the program that require additional staffing." I paused. "We also have records of direct communication requesting those changes, despite being informed they were not covered." Daniel nodded. "We documented each request as it occurred," he said. Patricia's expression shifted. "This is inappropriate," she said sharply. "We're in the middle of a celebration." I kept my voice even. "So am I," I said, "which is why this needs to be addressed properly." She turned to Lena. "Lena, tell them this is taken care of," she said. Lena opened her mouth, then closed it. Her eyes flicked between Patricia and me. For the first time all night, she looked unsure of what to say. I continued. "In addition to the contract terms, our system logs show repeated attempts to bypass standard approval channels," I said. "Those logs include timestamps and associated messages." Patricia took a step forward. "Are you accusing me of something?" she demanded. "No," I said. "I am explaining what has been recorded." The room had gone completely silent now. No clinking glasses, no murmurs, just breath and attention. I closed the folder and looked directly at her. "As of this moment, the options are simple," I said. "We can pause the event while payment is resolved according to the agreement, or we can conclude the evening with only what has already been authorized." Her composure cracked. "This is outrageous," she said. "Do you have any idea who you are speaking to?" I met her stare. "Yes," I said. I let the pause stretch. "I am the managing partner of the company that operates this venue," I said. "Final authority on contracts and compliance rests with me." The reaction moved through the room like a wave. Shock, recognition, understanding. Patricia stared at me, her mouth slightly open. Richard looked up sharply, his face draining of color. Lena's hand flew to her mouth. "You," Patricia said, "you were sent through the service entrance?" I nodded. "That is correct." Her voice rose. "This is absurd," she said. "You cannot do this to us." I did not raise my voice.
"I am not doing anything to you," I said. "I am offering a lawful way forward." Daniel stepped in smoothly. "We are prepared to hold the space while the payment is addressed, or we can conclude the evening in accordance with the current authorization." Patricia looked around the room, searching for support. The guests avoided her eyes. A few had already begun to understand what had been happening behind the scenes. "This is extortion," she snapped. "It is not, it is procedure." She took another step toward me, anger flashing openly now. "You planned this," she said. I shook my head. "I observed it," I said. Her breath came faster. Her control slipped. "You think you are better than us," she said. I looked at Lena, then back at Patricia. "No," I said. "I think rules apply to everyone." The silence deepened. Richard cleared his throat. "Patricia," he said quietly. She ignored him. Lena stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Please," she said, "can we just fix this?" I turned to her. "We can," I said gently, "if it is done correctly." Patricia looked between us, realization finally setting in. She had lost the room. Daniel waited. "What is your decision?" he asked. Patricia's shoulders sagged a fraction. She said nothing. Daniel nodded once. "We will hold the service," he said. "Staff will assist guests while we address the outstanding matters." The lights softened further. Staff moved with quiet efficiency. I stepped back, feeling the room exhale all at once. No one spoke. They didn't need to. Everything that mattered had already been said.
Chapter 5. What happened after the music stopped? The room stayed quiet long after the staff began moving again. People spoke in low voices as they gathered coats and purses, the kind of careful murmurs that followed a moment no one wanted to relive out loud. The music did not return. There was no attempt to salvage the celebration with laughter or another toast. The evening had crossed a line it could not step back from. Daniel handled the logistics with calm efficiency. Service was scaled back to what had already been authorized. Additional requests were declined without argument. A formal incident report was opened, not dramatically, just methodically, the way these things were supposed to happen. Nothing about it looked like punishment in the moment. It looked like process. That was what unsettled the Caldwells the most. Patricia stood near the main table, her posture rigid now, her smile gone. People avoided her eyes. A few guests offered polite goodbyes and left quickly, the illusion broken. Others lingered out of curiosity, trying to piece together what they had witnessed. Richard moved closer to her, speaking in a low voice I could not hear. She shook her head sharply, once, then again, as if refusing to accept that control had slipped from her hands. The consequences did not come all at once. They never do. They came in smaller ways that cut deeper. Phones began to vibrate, messages arrived, questions followed. Vendors confirmed documentation. Internal reviews were triggered quietly, automatically. The kind of systems that did not care about reputation or tone, only records. The Caldwells were no longer directing the room. They were being observed by it. Mark found me near the edge of the space, his face pale, his tie loosened further than before. "I did not know," he said immediately, "about the payment, about any of this." I believed him. "I know," I said. He exhaled shakily. "She told me it was handled," he said. "She always says that." I wanted to believe her. He looked back toward his parents, then back at me. "I cannot pretend any more," he said, "not after tonight." That was the first real decision I had seen him make all evening. Ethan Caldwell did not leave as quietly. Earlier in the night, I had noticed him hovering too close to staff, leaning in where he was not welcome, making jokes that landed wrong. Now one of the venue managers stood with him near the side entrance, speaking firmly while another staff member took notes. Ethan gestured wildly, his face red, his voice raised just enough for nearby guests to hear. It did not escalate. It did not need to. The behavior had been logged. Witnesses had been identified. Venue security escorted him out with practiced calm. No spectacle, no shouting,
just consequences arriving exactly where they belonged. Patricia watched from across the room, her expression frozen. Lena stood a few feet away from me, unmoving. When the last of the guests began to leave, she finally crossed the distance between us. Her composure shattered the moment she opened her mouth. "I did not know it was this bad," she said, tears spilling over despite her efforts to hold them back. "I thought if I could just get through tonight, everything would settle." Her voice broke. "I thought I was protecting us." I did not interrupt her. She looked at me then, really looked at me, not like I was a problem to manage or an inconvenience to hide. "You were the only one who told the truth," she said. I shook my head gently. "I told it when it mattered," I said. "There's a difference." She covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking. "I did not want to disappoint them," she said. "I did not want to disappoint Mom and Dad. I did not want to disappoint his family." I waited until she looked up again. "And you did not worry about disappointing yourself," I said quietly. The words landed slowly. "I am not angry with you," I continued, "but I am done pretending that love means silence. Love does not ask you to erase yourself." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I know," she said. "I see that now." Across the room, my parents stood near the exit, watching us. Margaret's hands were clasped tightly in front of her. Thomas stared at the floor. They approached hesitantly. "Evelyn," my mother said, "we did not know how to help." I met her gaze. "You could have tried," I said. Her eyes filled with tears. "We just wanted peace," she whispered. "Peace that costs someone their dignity is not peace," I replied. Neither of them argued. That silence was its own kind of admission. The event ended without ceremony. Staff cleared tables. Candles were extinguished. The windows reflected nothing but dark water and a few lingering lights. The space that had been designed for celebration returned to what it really was, a room. I gathered my things and walked toward the exit. Outside, the night air was cool and steady. The parking lot was nearly empty now. Cars pulled away quietly, taillights disappearing down the road. I stood for a moment and let myself breathe. I did not feel triumphant. I did not feel victorious. I felt clear. I had not raised my voice. I had not humiliated anyone. I had not twisted rules to my advantage. I had simply refused to accept a role that required me to shrink. That was enough. I walked to my car, the sound of my footsteps steady against the pavement, and started the engine. As I drove away from the venue, I knew things would not go back to the way they were. Some relationships would change, some might end, others might finally begin on honest ground. And as the lights faded behind me, one question stayed with me. If you were in my place, would you choose to keep the peace, or would you choose to keep your boundaries?